Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon to you all, and welcome to another episode of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. Coming to you, as always, perfectly pre-recorded to avoid any panic whatsoever, on places like Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, and iTunes. For me, it's the 17th of June 2023, but of course for you, you've turned into a pre-recorded podcast, so perhaps it's the 17th of June 2043. My name is Damien B. Donnelly, and for now I get to be your host and producer, and I'd like to say a huge thank you to you once again, the listeners, for tuning in. We have another spectacular lineup of 5 poets for you today, and a musical treat from a new contemporary Irish folk group. On this episode, we will peer into the sea, the colour of pecans, over the hills to lost loves, find soothing words while rain-fogged and sleep-deprived, uncover the stern task of living, sprawl over beds on white worn sheets, and fall into the bottom of a dark world. So yet again, we have another episode of diversity, of topic, and of course, as always, what I love the most, accent. So why don't you nestle back down on the sofa, hide yourself under the duvet, or just turn up the podcast volume in the car, provided of course you keep an eye on the road and have lots of snack breaks. My name is Damien B. Donnelly, this is Eat the Storms, and I hope you enjoy the show. And so in order to start today's show, I'm changing things up slightly because I'm the poet who's going to kickstart us today. Yesterday here in Ireland was Bloomsday. It was the 16th of June, and so I'm going to read one of my poems inspired by James Joyce's Ulysses. This is a poem that is called Telemachus by the 40 Foot, and it's inspired by the opening to Ulysses and Stephen Daedalus and his dead mother whispering in from the sea. Dreams are big black cats. There are ghouls that come in waves. The sea, a grey sweet mother snot green, scrotum tightening. Come and look. Smell wax and rosewood in the distance, circling even before death departed, leaving the ghost of grave clothes, its wetted ashes calling. Stephen. Waves rise upon rock. Bile is collected in china plate. The sea is grey, the china white, bile green. He is black, but will not go yet to grey, and did not come to knee. Impossible person, beastly. Sun overlooks the white breast of the sea, while adrift on a bed death has already delivered. Mother kicks buttercups off the quilt. Beastly is death and its deliverance, and worse, when it will not take its leave. Let me go. There are ghouls sweeping in over the sea, cruel chewers of corpses, while dead dignum has yet to be dug down. Black cats are big in dreams. First up today on Eat the Storms is a returning guest who was first with us earlier this year to celebrate Poetry Day Ireland for our special episodes, which has now become our most popular episode. And he will also return again next week for another episode, this time our Pride Poetry Party, which kicks off from 5 p.m. next Saturday. He is a French-Irish poet and he'll demonstrate his skills later on today at Languages. He writes in both English and Irish, was shortlisted for the Uncurt New Irish Writing Prize in 2023, and his poems have appeared in places like Booker Magazine, The London Magazine and Loft Books. I am thrilled to have back with us today, now a returning stormer, Dominic Sweeney.
Hello everybody, my name is Dominic J. Sweeney and I'm a poet from Donegal, Ireland. I will open and close with poems taken from my 3-part volume of work entitled It's Called Me and Him. I will also recite in Greek a poem by Kavafi with permission from the Oxford University Press and an Armenian poem by poet Haracha Sahugan with permission from ARC Publications. Enjoy. I sleep with a window open. Early in the morning, sprawled on my bed, worn white, wooden shutters fold on themselves. Open again, paint chipped. The winds brush and hush, stroke light in and out. Leaves and tree branch. Murmur conducts crescendo. A sea separating you and I. Waves beat my chest. Tempo quickens. Presence so tangible. Believe for a second it's you coming through my window. Casting. I have overstretched my arms so often, forgotten how it is to be stroked. Eyes shut closed. Perhaps just a cast of me could coax approach. Loss, a light, and far erma yas. The man on my right. A Julia dun, Bulia trom, eyes brown, heavies, ach souvenirs on pieces, fos ik fas, cas, ni féidir me, I've lost growths that I cannot taste. Ostoboris, as best you can. Gianzen Boris Nakamis, Tinzoisu, opus infelis. Even if you cannot make your life the way you want. Tu prosbapise. Tu lachiston. Try this, at least. Osoburis. Mean the next of the leases, as best you can. Do not demean it. Mestin poli sinafia tu cosmo, mestes poles kinesis, ki omelias, by too much contact with the crowd, by too much movement and idle talk. Mean the next of the leases, piano dasting. Joris ondastig na, kik vet ondasting. Do not demean it by dragging it along, by wandering all the time and exposing it. Ston chiesion ke ton sinen atrafon, tin cafi merinin, ano isia, to the daily foolishness of social relations and encounters, os punayini, samiakseni, frotiki, until it becomes an importunate stranger. Katil ar katil, drop by drop. Andrevi katil, ili, mikatil, a rain drop, another rain drop. Miuvnun terom, miaort katil. On the very same spot, a third rain drop. Chelakavum em, Andrevi, niman, I'm going mad, like the rain. Andrevi, niman, katil ar katil, like the rain, drop by drop. Words, words, Hun devil, over me. Knock, knock, shove, scuttle shins, spree. So papers whim, brims days, fleas. Unkind assessment unravels, freeze. 'Twas turn their rounds, chords sing, lends sounds towards sensual things. But a big lie fed, spread, buttered bread brings form studies, words stamped officially. Why curate creativity? Clamped words, ton devils, privity. Narcissus and Goldmund, Part 2. Good morn to the hills, where troubled thoughts do climb. Spills on dew, dries imbue, grassy nights, dark sigh. And gush upon broken seas, waves flush apain with ease. How I swam with him, heart seized, till passed through me a breeze.
Next up on the Poetry Podcast, we are off to the rather exotic location of St. Martin in the Caribbean. And having been to Curacao, I can assure you, listeners, that it is well and truly exotic. She is a poet, voiceover artist and Montessori teacher, and her poetry has travelled widely, to the shores of the United States, Canada, India, and the United Kingdom, to name but a few. Her two collections of poetry are inspired by her tropical locations. The first is called Full Moon Fire, Spoken Songs of Love, and the second, Moonchild, Poems for Moon Lovers. I am delighted to welcome for the first time to Eat the Storms, Marianne Tefft.
Hello everyone, my name is Marianne Tefft, and I'm pleased to share with you a few of my poems from the Caribbean island of St. Martin. The night I dreamed of dolphins. I knew you were coming the night I dreamed of dolphins. Walking with your father beneath moonlit veils of Spanish moss, so unlike the icy drapes that cascade from northern roofs, I had gazed with joy and awe so many years before as those sleek coursers sine-curved up the broad river. That night I stood on boulders, peering into a sea the color of pecans. From a depth where even my night mind knew no air breather could ascend, a dolphin flew toward the surface. Mesmerized by that determined arrow, I stared as if into a hand mirror, when the dolphin stood tall on his silver flukes, held me in the full sunshine of his indelible smile, then bent his strong neck and kissed me on the cheek. Unpleating my body in one move, I sat up sure, like tropical dawn that bursts from dream to daylight, knowing as I have never known anything before or since, you were coming the night I dreamed of dolphins. Premonition dreams. All these years I never told about the ghost. Not because she frightened me especially. I am a notoriously non-magical thinker, though I was taken aback by the petite blonde apparition, Dutch blue pinafore over white church blouse, staring back at me earnestly from the foot of my honeymoon bed. But because my only daughter would be born a towhead with a soft vanilla crown and cerulean eyes like shadows in Canadian winter, with every happy birthday song, foreboding eased its frozen grip on my maternal heart as I offered a silent prayer of gratitude. My long-ago visitor was not the living proof that in my life I would have a very few premonition dreams. Synchronicity. I don't believe in it, but I know it's true, I always say, when people ask me about Reiki or astrology or heaven. I even have my favorite archangel, Michael, because he's the big boss and his aegis is my favorite color, like the porch roofs in Gullah country, painted spirit blue to ward off evil. So when I awakened at 4 a.m. in a soaking sweat, call it mother-daughter telepathy or some kind of blessed synchronicity, that I was not the least surprised to learn she was calling my name 6,000 miles away, en route to a Dutch hospital at the very hour my panicked ululations rang out across the cane fields and soft narrow beaches of Marie-Galante, hours before the first ferry, because I knew something was terribly wrong with my only child. My daughter reminds me. Just this morning, my daughter says it's time to update my will. Sure, no problem, dead easy when you're the kind of person with a slim binder for insurance forms, another for appliance booklets, never consulted but still well filed, and a pair, the 3-inch kind, for all the immigration papers amassed on the endless field trip that has been our life together. Account numbers and passwords and filing places the simple part. Suddenly, I was facing the end of the document that would mark my final footsteps with my daughter. I had to pause and sit mid-hunt for balances on one of the blue boxes in the pantry that holds baby books and high school trophies. For she has lived in my heart and mind since the day I dreamed of dolphins and knew beyond knowing she was coming. As my dad, her poppy, promised, she has been the proudest work of my life, and I am so grateful for every single one of the hours we have shared, including those I fretted at the airport until she got home from Puerto Rico, where she had taken off with a friend in middle school to see the girl's dad, but forgot to mention it. She is my heart and every bit of my life as I imagine a new chapter beyond this plane, where I pray my love for her will illuminate her life the way her Sagittarian topaz has always bedazzled mine. Here in this windowless cupboard, my ears tremble with her sweet soprano, the voice I know one day will ignite the smiles of my grandchildren, and I unhitch my breath, knowing I will meet her tonight and forever under every full moon. To my child before I go. From the day you soared above our ancient stones, with your dreams for a crown and butterflies to lift your wings, I have known we would never walk these carpets of grass and thorns just the same way again. With every full moon night, that clear, cold light split my mind. Now my hour nears, but still I say it has not broken my heart. Through the years you longed to look deep beyond the mist, yet never plunge into the smoking falls. I felt my eyes soften as I listened to your hopeful voice speak its certainty, as my greater years filled in the wistful cadence, for a mother always knows the timbre and rhythm of one who springs from her body. I am grateful I could give you as birthright the hearts of our ancestors, for I know we shall meet again in a place where you are yet unwelcome, and I will visit you with every rising sun, every kind touch of breeze, every compliment shared with your beloved. For only the shell returns to the sea, and green leaves return to dust the red earth. My love for you remains. Birches. We planted those birches outside the gate the week you were born. They were beautiful in summer as we sat on the deck, waiting for the vidalias to caramelize on the grill. We watched you climb atop your playhouse to leap from its pink roof into the silver shade of dusk. They were beautiful in autumn as you stood on the deck of the neighborhood Olympic pool, lips blue, mummy-wrapped in towels, waving goodbye to summer vacation. And they were beautiful in winter as our breath billowed against the French doors to the backyard. You tapped your little fists along the hoary glass to make dimpled footprints on the panes. Those souvenirs are long gone, and your father too. But the birches are still beautiful in spring, with their hopeful rosaries of green outside the gate of the house where you were born.
Now, from the tropical shores of Santa Marta, we are now off to the sand and sangria of Spain for a poet who's originally from the United Kingdom but who moved to Spain 17 years ago. If you are a fan of Black Bow poetry, then you will undoubtedly have heard my next guest reading at one of their epic poetry open mic nights. Apart from wowing us in the Zoom room, this poet also finds time to be a taxi driver, horse wrangler, builder and project manager, but also finds the time to have his work appear in places like I Am a Poet, The Bow and Pilgrim House. Joining us for the first time in Eat the Storms, this is James McConachie.
Hi Damien, so stoked to be invited onto Eat the Storms. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm not sure what you might have covered in your introduction. I've had some stuff published online with Black Bough Poetry and I Am the Poet. I have a full collection ready to go, so if anyone feels the need to slide into my direct messages, now would be the time, because I hate my job. Anyway, yeah. I live in a very remote part of inland rural Spain, and I take much of my inspiration from the landscape, the history, because obviously Spain has a lot of history, and it's very tangible where I live, both in the wider area and even in my house. Also, one thing that inspires me and brings me joy is the incredibly dense, rich biodiversity we enjoy here, which is still very much in a natural state. Okay, my first poem I wrote on my birthday when my son asked me, "What do you want for your birthday, Dad?" And so I wrote this. Gift me this. Slavka is ordered to stop. Once snatched from the silvered streets, then phased with the drunken dreams of grain, or mudded into time's great grey eternity of fucking pointless pain, he sits, his back against the wall. There might be time to text Mama. Crack radio chatter through the fog. The sky has fallen quiet. From the village barks a dog. Gift me this. The big ships of the bay furl their sails with fatigue, the cargo put on hold. The dreams we knew will not now all be sold, but pitched into a butter churn all, to curdle at the moment of the shining city's fall. Gift me this. The rise, roar, gaping and hoping, turns the people into the street ablaze. From hiding, the waiting out those shattered days, but more than war, the end of it all. Gift me this. The shredded clatter, the drone of the machine, or the machining of drones. Fuck it, that bullshit too. Kick over the midden of the mind, maddened by rare fevers of a kind of plastic or some greasy mineral pried out of a hill with a spoon. It surely has to happen soon. Gift me this. At the barracks, the batons piled on the floor. There is the smell of pancakes. At the door, the news. They are descending the steps. Do not wait for orders. Go tend the coiled vine. Drink tea with asade by the shade of the old persimmon in the yard. They were right. It didn't have to be so hard. Gift me this. She watches me. She watches me across the table, and I know, because I am old, and now, at last, I know some things. Does he like me? I cannot answer your question. Take instead our mirrored hips, at once 2 glasses levelled slowly to our lips. You scan the crowd as I watch your hands, look to the cold silver sinew of your neck. You catch me looking, and of course we know, as have we always since the first. But this old fool has the dank weight of his sins and sorrows. This crazed eye gleams in its madness over the hills, lost loves, the sadness of their long-forgotten barrows. And so, for all these many, and because of this, you have it in your power. Don't touch my arm. We must not kiss. Penitente. The wind has come over the wrong mountain, and we are helpless. The dogs, deranged, bark at the void. The cats have got the scampers, and all day a fretful weeping sat ready at my elbow. The boys are all but men. My hand no longer cups the architecture of any shaping face, and I'm ready to jump the back fence, to lope over and on. My warrant, I suppose, now this, these sculpted sentiments, and their threat of a burned, unleavened, unpardoned love. The pines roar, wronged and godless. The owls puff out their feathers and hunker down to wait it out. Wrong wind, wrong day, wrong way to play a bad hand. Hands as they wash a cereal bowl. Hands of a rogue, a fool, a monster. Lightening the tone a little bit with something that's sort of vaguely mischievous. Dull blade of damnations. At dawn, lone shrouded in cold blankets still, before a breath is drawn, I'm sad to say, I wish you ill. For such a thing is wounded pride, your world today, as is my will, shall start to rim and ripple, where it founders in the turning tide. Before the tongue is laid out flat within my head, the moaning mummeries let fly, the shabby angels of cold common dread. It's something like what you called manifest, for my desire, at my behest. When fate there hovers on the cusp, my distant nudge sets it right just. One frosted Monday sees your starter motor seized with rust. Or how, as if I'd pulled a kind of karmic lever, I'm sorry, the cat will not recover from her tragic fever. Warmed to my theme, the fire, whim-winded from the crackling hill, will gather up the oxygen to scorch all of the tiles and the timbers of your pretty porch. For words are shadows in the multiverse, all probabilities thus equal and diverse, and open to blow this way or to trouble that. And though I balked and stayed my hand to save the cat, whipped into the sea a trifling thing, a mother's gift, your favourite hat.
Now, as I mentioned at the top of today's episode, we have just passed Bloomsday, although that will, of course, depend on when you tuned into this pre-recorded podcast episode. However, here in Ireland, Bloomsday is the 16th of June. It's a celebration of Ulysses and Joyce's epic A Day in the Life of Adventure. And so running through today's episode, we have little touches and nods to the man himself, James Joyce. I started off with a poem inspired, of course, by the opening of Ulysses and the wonders and meanders of the mind of Stephen Daedalus and his dead mother. However, now I'm delighted to welcome a musical guest to the podcast, a contemporary Irish folk ensemble comprised of Grania Hunt and Jim Murphy, and together they are Hibsen, and they have just released their debut album, The Stern Task of Living, which was launched in the Smock Alley Theatre on the 9th and 10th of June during the Bloomsday Festival, where they were joined on stage by the string quartet Musiki. Their debut album is inspired by the short stories in Dubliners, Joyce's 15 short stories, and so their album has 15 songs, each song named after one of the stories, and they very graciously agreed to let me play one of their songs in the podcast today. It is with enormous honour and pleasure that I hand you over to Hibsen, who are possibly going to bring us to Buenos Aires thanks to their song Evelyn.
I remember the day I first saw your face at the house on the road. I was stood by the gate, then I'd meet you outside the stores every day and see you home. Your father's upset, you met a sailor man, so we met in stealth and we made a plan. And then you were scared that he might raise a hand, 'cause he's angry as hell when 3 sheets to the wind. Time to escape, I'll give you new life in Buenos Aires. I'll make you my wife where the sun it shines, where we can be free, sweet Evelyn. Come away with me. For so many years I sailed on the seas, happy to roam wherever I pleased. And then I met you, fell head over heels, and now the time's come to settle, my dear. Leave the 2 letters behind in your house for your family and friends, so they know you're alright. We'll take the night boat to America South, through the Straits of Magellan, where the future is bright. Time to escape, I'll give you new life in Buenos Aires. I'll make you my wife where the sun it shines, where we can be free, sweet Evelyn. Come away with me. Here we are now in the sway of the crowd. It's time to board as the boat blows its horn. Chaos abounds, chaos abounds. Come take my hand, heavy it's time. Quick take my hand, for the boat blows its horn. Chaos abounds, chaos abounds. I know you're afraid, but it's our last chance. Time to escape, I'll give you new life in Buenos Aires. I'll make you my wife where the sun it shines, where we can be free, sweet Evelyn. Come away with me.
My next guest on the show today is the author of our collection of the week, Othernesses, and today he will share some sonnets from that collection along with some more sonnets from another recent collection called These Random Acts of Wildness, published by Glass Press in 2023. Othernesses highlights and celebrates the extraordinary undercurrents of life flowing, and was beautifully illustrated by Jane Cornwell and published by JC Studio Press. He is from the United Kingdom and runs the website The Wombwell Review. His poetry has been on BBC Radio 3, The Verb and BBC Radio Sheffield. His chapbooks include The Fabulous Invention of Barnsley, As Folk Over Yonder, and another collaboration with Jane Cornwell, Wonderland in Alice. He is a shop assistant and lives in a cat's house full of teddy bears. I am delighted now to hand you over to the author of our collection of the week, Othernesses. This is not only an exceptional poet, but also an exceptional champion of writers. Please enjoy the very good company of Paul Brookes.
I forage, chew wood pulp for my babies who give me sweetness in return. When they're bigger, I'll dismember aphids, fleas and spiders to take home for them. My queen who gave birth to me will outlive me. At night I'm still. I'll repair fly, babies' broken rooms. At warm light give flight and scratch out fibre until I die. I lay my own babies once. Another found out and ate them. I tend to my queens. As light dims sooner and days get colder, I get slower, stiller, food for the dream. It is too easy, a mechanically designed existence. Reality is messy. As an egg. I fell to the bottom of a dark world. I dug beneath the flow when hunger's need led me to what falls and lands, what unfurled as my mouth brushes grazed hardness for feed. Sometimes I hid under these hardnesses, when larger mouths turned, tipped others over. As grew, left behind smaller carcasses of myself. At my loss shook, I massed air that blew me to a brighter, warm surface. Where these wings dried out, I climbed stems to shed the last part of myself. Now I join the race into swarm to be grabbed, give birth, float dead. I lived most of my life bottom feeding the light, continued self before yielding. Ghost Forest. Ghost trees of the blue forest in her head. She stands among its trees and mulls which way, looks for signs of paths of another's tread, or to walk a road not taken this fine day. Listens to the ghosts of trees as they talk amongst themselves, and to the ears of earth. Stood in the middle of now, after walks through then, sees these her footfalls from her birth. A child marvelling at tumbling red roofs of Robin Hood's Bay in bright winter sun. Steep descent to smugglers' caves and rock grooves, knows these footfalls all she has to go on. Decisions must be made in loss and grief, how to move forward in pain through dead leaf. Ocean is inside and all around us, landlocked folk. We rise up to join waves of sky and cloud. We fall upon the world in downpours soak. We run down windows, gutters, river loud. We swap pleasures, seas between each other. Lobster potting boat, venture who cares, rests on cobbles like a caught ancient lobster. Lobbed back as it's paid its dues, worked its best. Awaits ocean to cover it once more. We are the tides pulled to and fro by moon. We are lap whose wash and crash shapes the shore, whose stillness reflects constellation's womb. Water never rests and neither do we. We are droplets, each one an inland sea. My window cleaning. I get stains out with yesterday's headlines. I scrunch up latest government scandals, press them into the glass to see defined detail more clearly. I tear out balls of latest war reports and fresh sports news. Crosswords, sudokus and wordles rub clean, bring clarity and sharpen the vague view. Some marks are stubborn, more effort to glean that transparency, to see beyond spin. Sometimes take steps, raise celebrities before pressing their folded faces into the glass. Bin the used personalities. I don't know why newspaper is the best for making every pane the brightest. a making stillness. Our need for some stillness encourages to mark it on surfaces, paper, walls, and achieve permanency. Cages, nature's life, domesticates the stranger, making postcard gifts of othernesses, recording the fleet, their disappearing, for those who cannot be here, witnesses to a time made into another thing. Our fascination with appealing lines, curves, colours, the shape of it all prompts our need to understand that which defines beauty, attractiveness, make monuments. Even these crumble in time as we try answer immortal material why. The surfaces. Dead human cells gather on the surfaces, disrupting reflection. Restore image with duster and polish. Reach places of loss with perfumed polish. Regain usage. It means you can look after yourself, care for others. Makes you a responsible citizen. Uncleanliness, bad prayer. Sinfulness becomes irresponsible. Remove germs, cross-infection. Simply spray away diseases. Ethnic cleansing. Sanitize life. Purity all we pray. Deepen our image in clear varnishing. Every deep rub brings out the grain. Let's dust away death and begin again. When making senses. Bumblebee exits through dark entryway. Butterfly briefly stained glasses our window. Ant sways up our back step as here to stay. Robins are in the back hedge lying low. Pigeons on garage roofs stab at stale bread. A frantic flap of wings as grief chases a mate of a hedge trimmer buzz. Black-head seagull call, a tide coming in phases. Disturbed moths flitter towards too much light. Blackbirds on unused terrace chimneys, enigmatic variations in touch with other bow-bright orchestral voices. Inhale sweetness of flourish and decay. Sugar entices small deaths each sunned day.
Now for my final guest, we are returning from the United Kingdom and settling down in County Meath here in Ireland for a poet currently looking for a publisher for her first collection, in case there's any publishers out there listening in. Her poem Miserable Morning, which you will hear very shortly, was shortlisted in the Frances Ledridge International Poetry Award 2021. And she's also been shortlisted in the Cathal Bui Poetry Competition, the Allingham Poetry Prize and the Bournemouth Writing Prize. She won the Anthology Short Story Award in 2020 and very soon will be featured in The Honest Ulsterman and Postbox. She also received an Agility Award from the Arts Council here in Ireland. I am delighted to welcome to the podcast for the very first time, Niamh Donnellan.
My name is Niamh Donnellan, and I'm a poet and writer from Meath. I've just finished my first poetry collection. At its heart, it's a love letter to my sons, but it's also an exploration of self and the gains and losses inherent in becoming a mother. It's very much rooted in the everyday, particularly in the entanglement of new motherhood and grief at the death of my father. Ball of words. I present to you this ball of words, tangled up with hair and dust, dried pieces of chocolate and lint, scrunched up until it's nearly solid contemplation, scooped from my deep pockets, sitting alongside soothers and snotty tissues, until it emerges with something small to say about life and the daily routine. Maybe it could do with some polish, cleaning, stretching and smoothing, till the lines glitter and glow, but the grubby earthiness rings truer to me. A ball a baby might just play with, and chase across the dusty floor, chew, exploring taste and texture, then discard as quick for something shinier and new. Elvis Baby. Jaw set and 2 fists up, lip curled like Elvis, James Dean frown. Time for a drink, the usual please. Thirsty work, this living lark. Slurp sighs and milk-drunk smiles give way to world-weary yawns. Hiccup surprise, see still eyes. Eyelids flicker and breathing slows. My merry monk, his heartburn hair burrows into me, seeking sanctuary. Lull. A thistle seed floats through the open window. Dances like tumbleweed past the toy train stopped at the station. A head of curls rests in Daddy's arms. Jam-smeared face, juice bottle dripping on the floor. Baby lies on me, arms flung up, breathing steady. Skin warm marble. On opposite sides of the room we rest too. No words but memes and smiles exchanged. Across the battlefield, teddies lie where they fell. Cushioned towers teeter, toy cars abandoned. Till the toddler stirs, baby unfurls, and we switch off, switch on again. Here I am. Here I am, 3 soothing words, brain fogged and sleep deprived, stumbling through long days and nights, soft shoes shuffle to more than mammy. Motherhood's collateral damage, a contrary metamorphosis to caterpillar. Silk dresses and slick eyeshadow give way to hoodies and dark circles. One day I unfurl mothballed finery and emerge blinking and unsteady in the neon light of a Saturday night, back into the world beyond you. Miserable morning. The rain falls steady. A dozen metronomes drip rhythms on the roof as we stand outside the church in silent solidarity, waiting for the hearse. Cars slow as crowds gather. Ghostly faces peer through windows heavy with condensation. The clouds hang heavy over muted conversation. Heads shake and hands clasp. Coffin borne on shaking shoulders. Family follow, bent down against the driving grief. Priests' prayers echo over crackling speakers, bringing solace to some. Water pours down salted faces, and contemplation's little comfort from the wet, now soaking through to skin and bone, heaping misery on misery. Small bright raincoats dart and flit beneath the canopy of black umbrellas, held close to shelter the restless children from a miserable morning.
And so today, just before we finish up, I'm going to leave you with one final poem, one final little touch of Joyce. This poem is called Funny, the oddity of this Odyssey after Joyce. Funny, isn't it? Bathing, morning after waking like drowning the dream. Tasting, eating, drinking. Old pants out, new pants on, up, under, in between, tightly tucked so as not to protrude, protract, put away. I'm always centre. Others are right or maybe left, and then it's coat, car, blow someone a kiss or kiss yourself in the mirror if no one has lingered longer, stayed, stained the sheets with sweat or that scent of something sweeter, and then we're off, out, riding through the traffic tightly tucked and now taunt, trying to get through the thoroughfare, the teasing, the tweezing, the twitching, the thinking about all the hours ticking, the tedium, the tick, the tit, the tat, the time I stayed and he left, the taxi where I held his hand while running through other traffic in another town. And then work. Work will see you through. With the greetings and the coffees and the doors and the cubicles and the pissings and shittings before the chairs and desks and turning it all on and counting down to when you can turn it all off again. After the meetings and the lunches and the coffees and the cubicles and the odours and distractors and disruptions and protrusions and protractions and the tension in the pants still taut and all the thoughts in between. Buy milk. Remember not to smoke, want to smoke, smell smoke, put it out. Go home. Cook. Shit. Shave. Shag or not, or wish or more. Use her hands, his hands, their hands, your hands, anybody's hips, pants down over lips, pull the curtains, hit the light, save the fucking dream you almost drowned this morning. Funny. Isn't it? Well, I hope for you that was a good evening, good afternoon, or possibly even a good morning, depending on when you tuned in. Because right now, we've reached the end of another episode of Eat the Storms, the poetry podcast. Thank you so much to you, the listeners, for tuning in, whether that's been on Spotify, Apple, Google, Breaker, Podbean, Player FM, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Castbox, Podcast Addicts, or iTunes. And of course, thank you, most importantly, to my star guests on today's show, and they have been Dominic Sweeney, Marianne Tefft, James McConachie, Paul Brookes, Niamh Donnellan, and the fantastic musical guest Hibsen, who comprise of Grania Hunt and Jim Murphy. Now, as always, for details of all of my guests on today's show, you can find all of their details over at eatthestorms.com. Head over to www.eatthestorms.com, click on the podcast section, and there you'll find a blog post for every episode. This was episode 5, season 7, and on today's blog post you will find photos, bios, social media handles, and websites where you can find, follow, and be their fabulous fans. Now, while you are over at eatthestorms.com, please note that we have only days left before submissions close for The Storms, our fantastic printed journal of poetry, prose and visual arts supported by Fingal Arts here in Dublin. I get to be the editor-in-chief, and my fantastic sub-editor for issue 3 will be the wonderful Nitty Casa, and we are so excited about uncovering all of your submissions, all that you've sent in so far and those that are coming our way. The inbox has been storming. Now, we are looking for poetry, prose and visual arts, and that includes painting, photography, collage and digital art. This time the theme is shelter, sanctuary and sanctum. Now, if you performed or participated or just tuned into any of the events going on during Bloomsday, then huge congratulations to you all. And if you sat down and tried to read Ulysses for the 57th time, then a huge congratulations to you all, because my God, dear Joyce did set us quite the challenge when he wrote that little book. Maybe, instead, you might take some inspiration from Hibsen and read his collection of 15 short stories, Dubliners, and while you're doing that, why not listen in to the perfect companion to those short stories, Hibsen's new album, The Stern Task of Living, now available on CD or on Spotify. Now, you shining, beautiful people, next weekend we have a very special episode here on the podcast because this is Pride Month, and here at Each the Storms we are celebrating with our annual Pride Party. We have lots of poets joining us from lots of different continents, lots of different countries, each of them sharing one poem on this single special podcast episode. So please don't forget to tune in, fly your flag, wear your freak, demonstrate the fabulousness of individuality, identity, and of course, what's most important here on the podcast, our voice. As a gay man who grew up here in Dublin, coming to terms with my sexuality at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, I am practically speechless that I now have a podcast where not only myself but others who struggle to come to terms with their identity get to gather together to celebrate the joy of simply being ourselves. So thank you to each one of you for cherishing, for listening, and for giving a home to every single voice that we've had here on the podcast to date. To date, we have had over 500 international voices over the course of the past 6.5 seasons. My love and thanks to you all. My name is Damien B. Donnelly, this is Eat the Storms, and until next time, keep your light shining, and as always, stay bloody poetic!
Oh, thank you.